Hi guys, and welcome back to Positively Diverse. I cannot wait to share my interview with you with Lee Thomas. I interviewed Lee Thomas last year for World Vitiligo Day, and his story inspired me. He talks about how he battled with his diagnosis in the early days of when he had vitiligo, to how he's managed his vitiligo through his successful career in the limelight as a Hollywood critique. His story is fascinating, inspiring and uplifting, and I'm sure that you will gain as much insight and support as much as I did. It's such a great interview. I hope you enjoy it, guys. Happy World Vitiligo Day ahead for June the 25th. Enjoy this interview. Thanks, guys, and stay positive. How are you? Happy World Vitiligo Day.
Same to you. Same
And
to
to
you.
everybody who's joining us tonight on this live, happy World Vitiligo Day. I hope you've had a wonderful day today. Lee, I know that you are just someone in the limelight with a busy schedule. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for giving your time to me on my platform and people joining us today to share, a little insight in yourself and just a little catch up really, because I met Lee about a year ago at a Vitiligo Society event and you blew me away, Lee, if I'm really honest.
Thank you.
You're one of these people that I won't go into too much detail because I'd like you to share your story, but you completely blew me away. So I don't know if you wanted to sort of tell us about how's your day today? What were you up to today?
Well, for everybody who does not know, I am a TV journalist, a TV presenter here in the United States, in Detroit, Michigan. And so I am the host or co-anchor of a morning show. And so this morning I had an interview with a writer-director named Jon Stewart, who used to be on a show called The Daily Show here in the States. And he has a movie coming out called Irresistible, and I interviewed the stars of that movie. Rose Byrne is one of them. She's from Australia, Australian actress. I interviewed an actor named Chris Cooper, and I, of course, interviewed Mackenzie Davis. She was in the last Terminator movie. And I also interviewed the writer-director, Jon Stewart. So all of that stuff aired this morning. I did another interview on a 6-part documentary with Patton Oswalt. His wife made it. His late wife made it. It was actually a very compelling story about the Golden State Killer. I think that's what he's called. But anyway, just some great interviews. I hosted 2 hours of a morning show, and then I did 2 other hours. I was just in them, and then I wrote a bunch of stories. Just a bunch of work all the way up until now. I just rushed home, washed my face, and got ready for you.
So this is just like, a tiny bit on the side in terms of like what you've done today. Your day is extraordinary. You've like met so many actors, so many actresses. You've like been, interviewing all day. You must be pretty exhausted.
You know what? I could say, man, I'm so tired. But the truth is I sit in a comfortable chair, and it's an air-conditioned studio. And it's like talking to my friends. I've been working here for a long time. And so, yeah, I'm not that tired. I'm actually, the sun's shining outside. I'm good. I love doing a morning show because I get off by afternoon here in the States. So I'm done by 2 o'clock, and I'm fine.
Like
Yeah.
a great schedule, Lee, a really great schedule. And I sort of see now you look very fresh faced. You haven't got makeup on. Did you actually, do you want to, so Lee, thanks for introducing yourself. I know you've told us about your day, but I don't know, some of my followers and friends and people that have joined onto this conversation, they don't quite know the story behind your vitiligo. I was wondering perhaps if you could just share your journey and how you've dealt with your skin in the media, in the limelight.
Yeah, so I can go back as far as you need to if you have time, because I talk for a living and I can talk. So I was in my mid-20s, and I got a little patch on the back of my head, just a little. It's about the size of a quarter. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't really believe me when my barber told me that I had a patch on the back of my head. He literally he gave me the mirror after he gave me a real close haircut, and he said, look at it, you know, how does it look? And I look at it and I go, man, you nicked me on the back of my head. I can't believe that you got me right there. And he's like, no, I didn't do that. That's your head. And I'm like, no, it's not my head. You're crazy. And so I pick up the mirror and I go real close, and I could see it was like the beginning of a white spot on the back of my head. And I'm like, oh man, I can't believe it wasn't the barber. I thought it was just a mistake. And so I did what any 25-year-old grown man would do. I went directly home and I called my mom. I called my mama and I said, Mom, what's wrong with the back of my head? And she said, it's a stress mark and it'll go away. And Mom was actually right. The stress mark did go away. But then two more came up on the other side, and two came up in the corners of my mouth. One came up in like right here in the rim of my ear. And then Mom says, go to the doctor. You know, I called her back. This is months later. But anyway, I was diagnosed with vitiligo while I was on a television show in New York City. I worked in New York City at a station called WABC. And so I was diagnosed there, and it was a shocker at first. Like I thought it was going to be a showstopper. Like I thought my career was over. I had first of all, I'd never seen anyone with vitiligo. I never seen anyone on TV with vitiligo. And so I'm sitting here thinking I worked super hard. I spent, you know, I paid for myself to go through college, and it looked like somebody just popped up behind you. That is crazy. That person's not in the room, is he? Behind you, Jody. Look, in your monitor.
Where were you in the midst of, were you in the start of your media career, your journalism, like you're presenting? Had you just started that career pathway when your vitiligo, or were you a little bit, you know, ahead of that? Had you already started off?
Okay. I was about 4 years into my career. It happened on my second job, and my third job was that job in New York City. And at the time I had other things going on. Like I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I don't know if you know what that is, but I was just tired all the time. And as I kept up with that job, you know, I got the spots, and it was easy to cover the little ones up. You know, I could cover my hand. It was easy to cover them and just keep going like nothing's happening. And so I left that job, and I was going to try and get healthy. And I went from being a reporter in New York to being an anchor here in Detroit. And when I got to Detroit, I just had a few spots on my hand, few spots on my, you know, I could cover them with makeup and not many people would notice. I remember I was on a date once, and the girl I was on the date with, she goes, there's something on your mouth. And she rubbed my mouth and the makeup came off. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not. And so, you know, I grab my mouth and I run to the bathroom. But anyway, I'll shorten the story. Probably about 10 years of having vitiligo, it was something that I felt like I could not hide anymore. So I decided that I was going to not put it on my hands. And the reason I decided it is because I would rather people think that I had a disease or seek out what was wrong with my hands. And at the time, they were kind of multicolored. I would rather people seek out information about a disease rather than think I was dirty, because I had brown makeup and I would scratch somewhere during the day, anywhere. And I had, you know, gray suits and tan suits, and there'd be a big brown mark on my suit. And I'm like, I'm not going to keep going through that. Let me just not cover my hands. I'll just cover my face. And so people who had vitiligo would notice my hands and they would write in. So a 14-year-old kid wrote, his mom called me and asked me if I could talk to him because he saw me on TV. He knew I had vitiligo because his hands matched my hands. And she asked me if I would talk to him because he was drawing some kind of courage from seeing me, which I was surprised by.
Yeah.
And so I told the lady, please have him call me. So the kid gives me a call and we're talking about stuff, and he's a straight A student. he's doing good in school. He's taking karate. He was like a karate guy, and he really had his head on pretty good, you know. And he said to me, he said, I have to ask you a question. And I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. You know, we've been talking the whole time, questioning back and forth, but he led in by saying, I have to ask you a question. And so I said, he says, I say, sure, go ahead. He says, would you show your face on TV without your makeup on? And it just took me off guard. I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, why would I do that? I'm not trying to get fired, you know. But instead, I said to the kid, you know, my boss has been asking me to do it for a while. She had, because I had to tell them that I had vitiligo. I had to tell them what I was going through so that they would know at my job what I was dealing with and that I was choosing to cover it with makeup. I never showed them my face. I just told them. I showed them my hands and I told them. And my boss wanted me to do a special report on it and tell everybody. And I'm like, let me think about it. Because you can't tell your boss no. I told my boss, let me think about it. But my answer was really no. Because I felt like all they wanted was, watch the black guy turning white tonight at 5, you know, and I don't get anything except maybe fired. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I just tell her, for 2 years, I was telling my boss, let me think about it. So when this kid asked me, it was different because he had no stake in it really to me. And so I asked the kid, why would you want me to do that? And he said something that changed my life. He said, if you show people what you look like, then maybe they will treat me differently. And it blew me away. I never thought of it that way. I never looked at it that way. And I think life is that way. People are always, you live in your own little bubble, you know, and you have your blinders on and you go to work and you do the things that you're supposed to do. And you don't really think about the way you hold yourself, the way you communicate with others means something to people, that it can represent things. And so I never thought of it that way. My blinders were blown off. And so I say to the kid, sure, I say, sure, I will absolutely do that, you know. And he goes even further and he said something that just like tore right at my heart. He said to me, good, because there's this 8-year-old who lives in my neighborhood and he has what we have. And he wears a ski mask to go outside and play because the other kids tease him so much. And maybe if you show what your face looks like, maybe the adults around him will see that and they will tell the kids around him to leave that kid alone because it's just vitiligo. So this 14-year-old boy had called me to help an 8-year-old. He really wasn't even calling for himself. And I was a 30-something-year-old man hiding my face. And I thought, you know what? If I can help one kid with this, then I'll take the makeup off. And so I did that.
That turned into, that's incredible. I mean, from a child's perspective, and children do say the truth, right? They tell you exactly what they think without holding back, and it's always done in a very honest way. I mean, I work like with children and young people, so you kind of know, you know, they say how it is. And so when he gave you that information and he said to you, would you take your makeup off? Like you said, you knew it came from a good place.
Absolutely, because kids, you know how it is with kids. Kids see you without makeup and they're super honest, but they're also super understanding at the same time. They're like pure emotion. I had a little boy, I was at a birthday party for my daughter when she was like, I want to say 3 or 4. And this little boy runs up to me and he runs up to me and he goes, you look like a cow. And the whole party stopped and started staring at me and this little boy. And so I knew that the way that I react to this little boy is going to define how everybody treats me and him at this party. So his mom jumps up mortified and starts running over, you know, going, no, 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 no. And I go, no, no, it's okay. It's okay. And I look down at him and I kneel down a little bit and I say, I look like a cow, huh? He goes, yeah, yeah, like you're brown and you're white, like a cow. And I go, you're right. And I go, how about like one of those horses, right? And he goes, yeah. And I go, it's like a Palomino or a Appaloosa or something. He goes, yeah, yeah. And I go,
you brought humor into it. You brought humor into it.
I said, I'm super fast. And he goes, I'm fast too. And he takes off running and comes back. And the next thing the kid said to me, he goes, that's cool. When are you going to cut the cake? And it was over. Just like that, it was over.
So you've had all these kind of, you've had these kind of positive experiences. You've had, you know, lots of positive experiences that have actually made you become a very confident person. But Lee, can you share perhaps some of the difficulties, the challenges that you've had to face? Now, obviously, it took you 2 years, you said, to, you know, to speak to your boss and to be comfortable enough to say that you will go on TV, and that was when you were ready. And I have a conversation like this quite regularly with many people on my platform. It's about being able to expose your skin when you're comfortable, and essentially, it took you 2 years because that's the time that you needed to do that, right?
Well, I wouldn't put the number of 2 years on it. It took me my boss had been asking me to do a report for 2 years.
Right. Okay.
And I did not want to do the report. But I've had a variety of experiences, from the worst of the worst to the most amazing of the best. It's funny because when you go through something in life, people seem to, like, you could have a whole year of great things happening in your life, but one bad thing happens and all of a sudden you go, man, that was a terrible year. But it was just one thing. It was one day in 365 days. So have I gone through terrible things? Absolutely. I had celebrities that wouldn't shake my hand. I've had people move to the other side of the elevator when I got on the elevator. I've had people move to the other side of the street when I'm walking down the street. I went to a gas station. I was getting gas or petrol, whatever you guys call it over there. I was getting filling up my car, and I go in to pay for it, and the guy that was at the counter looks at me and goes, "Take that stuff off your face." And I'm like, "There's nothing on my face to take off." And he's like, he calls his buddy over. He goes, "Get over here. Look at this guy's face." He goes, and he goes, "What the hell is that, man? Take that stuff off your face." And I'm like, "There's nothing on my face. There's nothing on my face." And I'm like, "I don't know what to tell you. I just want to buy gas. I just want to leave. There's nothing on my face." He goes, "Cut it out. It's not Halloween." And I'm really trying hard not to get mad. I work very hard at not getting mad. And right when I was getting ready to give him what for, a lady behind me goes, "Don't you know who he is? He's Lee Thomas, and he works for Fox 2. That's nothing on his face. He has a disease. You need to leave him alone." And it made me laugh because the lady was defending me before I could defend myself. And it turned out okay. But, you know, I've gone on dates before where I just kind of ended the date because I didn't feel comfortable anymore. I walk into a club and the bouncer is just staring at me and won't let me in. And I'm just like, "Dude, it's just a skin disorder." He's like, we're full." I'm like, "The club's not full. I'm looking in there. There's nobody in there."
Lee,
So I could go through a variety of frustrating events that have happened.
I mean, I'm feeling what you're saying, and I know that many people that are listening to this are going to resonate so much with everything you're saying, from, you know, whether it's the stare, you know, sometimes actions speak louder than words. You just have to give that glare. And you've said multiple harsh comments to someone, spiteful comments, with just looking, you know, at that person in a particular way. And I think many people are going to understand that have vitiligo, that have had to endure this. And it's a difficult situation. I think everybody has to find their way to deal with this. Quite often, I think many people have different ways, whether it's sort of direct confrontation, or whether it's educating people and talking to them about it, or whether it's just walking away. But one thing I do want to ask you is, all these experiences and negative sort of comments and behaviours and attitudes towards you, would you say, Lee, that they were something of the past, or do you think that these attitudes are slowly changing in recent times?
When I first wrote my book called Turning White, no one had talked about vitiligo. I didn't see I didn't know there wasn't another book from a patient perspective about vitiligo when that book came out. And I got so much attention for that book that I was not expecting. So I saw no one when I first started talking. And so that's why I took the proceeds from the book and I started my support group here in Detroit called V Strong, because I felt like I didn't want all this attention, but now that I have it, I needed to do something good. And my intention was to help that one kid. So if maybe I can start a support group to not only help that kid, but help a lot more kids. So I turned it and focused it into the support group. And as I started to go around the country and ended up going around the world talking about vitiligo, I started to see more and more people. They were always there, but I think much like a lady I met in San Antonio, Texas, she had vitiligo much like my face is now, even less brown. And she'd only come out at night to do her shopping at a grocery store that was at night. She would do it after 10 p.m. or after 11 p.m. because less people were in the store. And then she'd stay home most of the day because of all the negative comments. But you know, I had to make a hard choice about being positive and working my way into that positivity, which is what that TED Talk, I did a TED Talk. That's what that TED Talk is about. Because I am a positive person and I refused to let this disease turn me into something that I was not. So I had to figure out how to remain the positive person that I am in the midst of dealing with some of the negative things that were happening. Because overwhelmingly, it wasn't, I'd say it felt like it was 50-50 negative to positive. Then it turned into like, as I started paying attention, like 80-20, more people more positive than negative. Then it's like 95 to 5%. Overwhelmingly, more of the comments and things that I get were positivity.
But that tiny 95%, but that tiny 5% can be the one that really gets to you, that really can affect you mentally, psychologically.
Not really. That's
generally
an actual choice.
with people that are struggling with, you know, with coming to terms with the condition, I suppose, you know, is the point.
I do understand that, but to me, life is so much of what you make it, right? And so it's so much about choice. And as soon as you choose to not let those, because you can't control other people, you can only control you. And for me, I was letting other people turn me into an angry spotted guy, and I hated it. And so I refused to, no matter what, I stayed positive. And I'll give you an example. After that thing happened at that gas station, I have to get gas like every 2 weeks. You know how that goes. So a couple of years later, I'm at another gas station. And you know how you can see the person on the pump next to you? Like they're right on the other side of the pump, and you can see them here in the States. You can see them while you're pumping your gas. So I felt this lady staring at me like we all do. You know how they just stare at you when you're not looking at them?
Yeah.
And then you look at them, and then they look away. So this lady's staring at me, and I'm letting people stare because I chose to let people stare. And I look at her, and she gives me a mean look and goes, like that. Like, you're nasty, right? So I do this. I go, what's up, girl? And I wink.
Brilliant.
And it made that woman so mad. It made her so mad that I did that, and I thought it was hilarious. And I'm like, oh my God, this positivity thing works, because her negativity was on the other side of the pump with her, and that's where it stayed. In my positivity, I was laughing on my side of the pump, and that's where I stayed. So positivity is something that you have to choose and work at and get professional at being positive. And it works. It absolutely just works.
And Lee, do you know, you are so right. It's the mindset, it's how you're thinking, it's what you're reflecting, what you're exposing, what you're giving off to everyone, what you're radiating. You know, I have to say though, I did see, sort of just going back to your podcast, your TED Talk. I have to say though, I again was just mesmerized, because you start that TED Talk with your face with makeup.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you've got this reaction there, and you've got you know, the audience there, and you start off your conversation, and then you sort of walk over and you get this wipe, and even I'm wondering, what are you doing? What are you doing, Lee? You know, you kind of get people to think, you know, what are you up to? And then you just start removing it, but you do it in a really sort of gradual, slow way, which is great, because even I sat back and I was like, as I saw you doing that, you think so many things in your head. You know,
it gives people time to process.
That's what they were doing. And I looked at your audience, because a camera did go on to them. I looked at their expressions. What were they thinking? What was going through their mind? And I have to say, Lee, one thing that stood out, they were just all you know, they had you sort of on this pedestal, like, wow, you're an incredible, incredible person. Like, you've just, you know, taken off your makeup, and to people, to other people, I suppose it's a really big thing.
It was something, because it was like, I think like 250 or 300 people in the audience, and And it was my idea to do that because I've done that before, and the reaction is amazing. First of all, you could hear a pin drop when I was doing that. It took about, 3 or 4 minutes for me to get the makeup off. And I thought that the TED people were going to edit it out, but they left a lot of it in. And so there, you look at the audience, and one lady's like, oh, and people are like, they're like glued, which to me, I take it off every day. So I was just like, let me take this off and then see if I always like doing that. I did it on a talk show when my book came out, and I had the makeup on for one segment. Then I went backstage and they introduced me again. I took it off, and one lady literally grabbed her chest and goes, "Oh my God!" And I'm like, "Wow, wow!" Because the thing is, when somebody has a reaction that's so visceral, so emotional, it says more about them than about me. It's what they think of cosmetically about themselves and the world rather than me. And I find it amazing that this disease is not contagious. It's not life-threatening. I can still play basketball and still have my daughter and all of these things.
Yeah.
But people look at it and they just have this whole whirlwind of thought that has nothing to do with me, and I leave it with them.
And what do you think about, what do you think about this word? You define the condition as a disease. I tend to use condition more. I'm quite reluctant to use disease, Lee. I suppose I sort of associate it with, I suppose, a little bit more negativity, whereas a condition is like, could be eczema or psoriasis or any sort of skin condition. Is this a term in America that's used quite frequently? Because I do have, people that use this term quite frequently. Is this one that's kind of used in the States more so than the UK, do you think?
Yeah, when I was in Houston, we had an open forum talking about this, and I enjoy talking about this because in this country, it's important to be called the disease. Because for me, and I've had this for a long time, I'm comfortable, all of those things, but I would love to see a cure. If not for me, for the kids that are growing up so they don't have to deal with what we had to deal with to get here. And so in this country, they get funding and you get doctors behind it and you get attention if you're a disease. If you're a disorder, you get nothing.
Well, perhaps nothing's happening here because of that essential.
You get nothing.
That real reason.
If you get categorized as a disease, which it is, like eczema or psoriasis or any of these other skin diseases, you get money, you get funding, you get a relief, you get treatment, you get a cure.
Yeah.
But if you're not a disease, the government doesn't even see you. Disorders you can live with all day. Disorders are cosmetics. Diseases are physical things that need cures.
Yes.
And that's why it's simply put, in my opinion, you need to refer to it as a disease, get comfortable with that word if you ever want to see a cure. Because it takes money to cure a disease.
Yeah, and I just feel that, I mean, it's still a very sort of slow process here, I think. It's one of the ones that's at the very bottom of funding. Pharmaceuticals aren't pumping that money in because, it's not life-threatening, is it? I mean, psychologically it is. It's threatening to the whole body in every aspect. But, looking at this from a holistic point of view as well, so yeah, it's really interesting, and the reason I wanted to ask that question is because it does sort of come up on the platform, and it does come up in social media. Some people use disease, and some people use conditions. So I did want to kind of, get a general understanding of that.
It's personal because people don't want to say I have a disease, because when you say that, it makes people think, you think you're going to get ostracized. You think people are going to leave you alone because, oh my God, you have a disease. But the truth is, in the true altruistic sense of living, if you want to help cure this, it needs to be a disease.
Yeah, it does. No, absolutely. No, it's thank you for kind of exposing that a little bit more and talking about that, Lee. And I think another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about as well really is just our skin does come under that. People are discriminated against, and it is happening this day and age. I mean, what's happened in America recently with George Floyd. I mean, this is this racist attack, and I think when we talk about skin and skin color, it's really saddening that this day and age, that this discrimination still exists in so many different sectors of the world and as a society. Do you sort of see things kind of changing? I mean, I know we have sort of talked about this previously, but in terms of, you know, I mean, this whole situation that's highlighted was so saddening. What
You
was
mean
your...
the racial dynamic changing in this country? Do
Yeah,
I see that changing?
yeah,
Um, you know, I'm not a young guy. I've been around for a long time. One of the first big stories that I ever covered was the LA riots after the Rodney King verdict in
right.
Los Angeles. And some of the exact same things that I have seen my whole life are still happening now. And so for me to say the only difference I see right now is more colors than brown and black are in these protests. More people are talking, and that is different than I've ever seen before. Is it going to implement change? The only time you really implement change is when you're able to affect policy, when governments put policy in place that directly deals with diversity and inclusion. And if that doesn't happen, then it'll be the news story of the day, the month, the 2 months, and then it's over, and more African American men in this country are killed. So I am directly affected by it. I've been stopped by the cops so many times. I stopped counting. I've had guns drawn on me by cops twice.
Goodness.
Um, it happens in this country. I talk to every male in my family, and they've been stopped by the cops, and it has not gone well. Fortunately, we have been told and taught what to do so you can get out of this situation. But if you're asking me, do I think it's going to change? I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah, it's all the it's mental. You see, I've been a teacher for 15 years, and I'm sort of transitioning into the media. I work with
Mm-hmm.
young people of today, and I
Mm-hmm.
look at like curriculums that are taught in schools. Even when I look at a history curriculum, is there enough representation? Indian world history, slavery, is there enough of that in the curriculum to give children that understanding of what's going on in society? I don't think there is. I think we have to start at the root of the problem. We have to start educating our children
Absolutely.
to
That's
grow those
exactly right.
values and understand, you know, from an early age.
I mean, I'm sure you had, I don't know what it's like in your country, but did you have to deal with discrimination as well?
Well, Lee, my parents are Indian. They came from East
Mm-hmm.
Africa, from Kenya. So my dad wore
Oh.
a turban, and he was
Mm.
very much discriminated against. My in-laws, my husband's parents, they got kicked out by Idi Amin. They were Indians that got kicked out by Idi Amin, and they came to the UK with nothing, with
Wow.
absolutely nothing. And they had so much discrimination. I mean, back in those days, you had no blacks, no Asians, no dogs on the front of the rental property. So you couldn't go and even rent a
Wow.
property in the 60s, 70s, you know, with
That
signs that, you know,
that is
so
insane. No blacks, no Asians, no
no
dogs.
dogs,
Wow.
no dogs. And
Wow.
I remember my dad telling me, giving me his own history lessons and telling us about what they had to endure, because physically he looked different because he had a turban. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there wasn't a lot of integration and integration and multiculturalism in England at that time. So therefore, you know, it was a very
Yeah.
hard time for them. I personally would say that my discrimination has been subtle discrimination, Lee. So it will be
Mm-hmm.
the no, it will be non-verbal. It will be through
Well,
the eyes.
let me ask you this, which is an interesting conversation for both of us. I hope you don't mind me asking you some questions
Absolutely,
because
please do.
good,
Yeah, it's a
good.
two-way.
So do you find that more people treated you differently when your face was one color, or do they treat you more? Did you find more trouble with the vitiligo than with just your own ethnicity?
Now, funnily enough, when I was growing up, I went to a school where I was one of maybe three Asian kids.
Uh,
So it was quite a suburban school that I went to, quite a white affluent area. And I never really saw racial tension, or I was never bullied or anything like that.
really?
No. And this was Southeast London. Southeast London,
Mm-hmm.
Lee.
Wow.
Now it's extremely diverse. It's such a diverse hub in, you know, where my family live now. I don't live there any longer. Um,
Hmm.
and I suppose I only started noticing things when I was with my father, when I was with my family, when I was wearing my traditional Punjabi outfit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when I noticed it. You know, you would get look,
Hmm.
the look.
Hmm.
And sometimes you would get the odd word, you know, the racial comment beginning with P. That was quite
Yeah.
common. You know, it was like water for
Mhm.
ducks back when you heard it, because it was just like, have you
Yeah,
got
I
anything else to
understand.
say now? It's getting a bit
Yeah.
boring.
We have our own word here that I've heard a lot. It's the N word here, but yeah.
But funnily enough, so from that part of things, from that side of things, I would say yes, there was passive racism, passive
Hmm.
ignorance. Well, ignorance still exists, doesn't it? Really, there isn't passive ignorance. It's ignorance is people are ignorant or not ignorant, and they were, and they some still are. But in terms of vitiligo, I would say it's been a huge positive change for me.
Mm.
I haven't had any negativity at all, which is
Wow.
something. I mean, I did the documentary, a documentary which was on TV a couple of years ago, and that was
Hmm.
the first time really I went on TV without my long sleeves, because I used to cover up to my fingertips. I
Hmm.
used to find outfits that I would be able to cover up right to my nails here,
Wow.
because I
Wow.
was like you said, you know, what,
Hmm.
you know, what are people going to think? What are they going to say? Are they going to say something? Let's just cover it all up and fit in, like, you know, like
I
people
understand.
would like to see me fit in.
I understand. Yeah.
And it worked. It worked for
Hmm.
21 years, Lee.
Hmm.
So for 21 years, um, that way of life worked. It was a perfect life. It was an idyllic life, because I could fit in just like everyone and be the brown one that no one knew anything happened. But the really
Yeah.
funny thing was, I'll have to tell you, when I covered up my vitiligo, I covered it up for so long. I would spend 3 hours, you know, even putting makeup on my arm. So I used to wear
Hmm.
dermablend, and I'd sit there like this, patting my skin like
I
this
know
all the way.
Dermablend. I know Dermablend. Yeah.
45 minutes on that arm and then the other arm. And I got to the point where I fell pregnant with my daughter, and I thought, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't got time to do this anymore. I've got to feed her and bathe her. I haven't got time to
Yeah.
pat my skin down because the postman's answering the door.
I
And it
know.
just got to the point where I was like, this
Yeah.
is just ridiculous. I'm
Yep.
hiding it from neighbours, from family. I can't do this. And I just
Hmm.
gradually started to reveal my skin. First the
Yep.
arms,
Hmm.
then the neck, then
Yeah.
the legs. Um, and then I went into school, and the whole school saw me without makeup. And they're like,
Yeah.
Miss, you look amazing. I'm like, oh,
That's
really?
awesome.
Are you
That's
sure? Talking
awesome.
about me?
Because it's so unique, you know, what we have is so unique. And people in this day and age are looking for something to make them unique, and we have it naturally. It's really quite amazing.
Now, these filters are something to talk about as well. So, you know, you say that we're looking unique, and, you know, this is part of who we are. But they are, you know, these absolutely crazy people who are coming up with these apps on TV,
Hmm.
no, T
Oh,
on,
you
sorry, on
mean the
phones.
vitiligo app?
Vitiligo apps, like to say that
That's
you've got
yeah.
vitiligo, and, you know,
Right.
creating these vitiligo sort of
Right.
filters and things. It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know why people think it's so cool and so trendy.
Well,
But
I'm always in. I always try to stay in the positivity camp, and for me, anything that brings awareness to vitiligo is good. It's good. If it's trending for a few months that there's a vitiligo app, some people will be so upset. Some people won't, but at least they're like, well, what is vitiligo? And they kind of study it up a little bit, so the next time they see someone with it, they won't be surprised.
yeah, I know. I do feel a bit uncomfortable. It's not like I would go out there and put a filter on myself with eczema. I do find it really disturbing. I
Hmm.
find it very uncomfortable as well when I see people post things like that.
Hmm.
Personally, I just wish they wouldn't, because this is something we have to live with. It's something that we have
Right.
to
Some
endure.
people post very mean things, but I've been on TV most of my life, and I have had the meanest of the mean comments. And so I don't. I don't even see them
Lee,
anymore. That's how far
how do you
gone.
deal with these? I know you've talked about positivity. You've talked
Mhm.
about, like, we've talked about mindset, but how do we really deal with these nasty comments? I mean, like I said, I haven't had anyone come to me and say
Right.
anything to me, but I think if I did have someone that came over and, let's just say, spat on the floor or did something really random, I think it would get to me. As much as I'm sort of saying I'm quite strong and quite resilient, I think something
Well,
like that would. How do you actually overcome something like this?
well, the online stuff I can delete fairly quickly. I don't even give it much thought. If I start reading a comment that's 4 words in and it's something bad, I don't read the rest of it. I don't put myself through that. And some
Yeah.
people will, which I'm really careful with what I allow in here and in my heart. I'm very careful with that. So online, it's easy to do. Now in person, I'm an African American man. I'm about 6'2", almost 200 pounds. I'm not afraid of much. So if you actually come up to me and say things, I grew up in a place where you had to be able to handle yourself. So if you come to me like that, I can come back at you like that as well. But I don't like doing it, and I won't unless you force it out of me. So I have no problem. But it's the same thing as almost like dealing with racism.
Mm.
When people come up to you with these negative things, I don't like people's energy becoming my energy. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to do. You know how when you're in a group of people and that one guy walks in and you go, "Hey buddy, how you doing?" And he goes, "Oh man, I had such a rough day." And all of a sudden all the air is out of the room and everybody's like, "Oh, well, what happened?" And it's like, so it change energy is contagious.
You
And
did.
so I'm very conscious of that. I'm very conscious of energy. And I interviewed Will Smith many, many years ago, and he taught me a lesson that I like sharing with people. And Will Smith was talking about shooting a movie, and he was talking about how he keeps his energy positive because he said he needs to be in a creative space. And I said, well, how do you do that? And he said that, staying positive is something that I fight for. And I never thought of it that way until he said it, like fighting for positivity. What do you mean? And he said, well, if I'm in a room and somebody's being just negative and mean and bad, the first thing I do is I try to crack a joke and change their mood. Like I'll try to change their mood. And if I can't change their mood, and I'll try multiple times, if I can't change their mood, the second thing I'll do is if I have power in that room, I'll ask that person to, take a walk and walk that off and come back with a better attitude. And I go, well, you're Will Smith. You have power in every room you go in. He goes, no, no, no. I don't. I'm just in the movies. I don't own them
He's
yet. And
incredible.
this is many, many years ago. And I said, well, what do you do if you can't make the person leave? He says, the third thing I do is I will leave the room because positivity is something worth fighting for. So the lesson in all of that to me is however you fight to maintain your sanity and your positive space, fight for it because that is what you own on a daily basis.
I love
Don't let
that.
somebody's energy change who you are ever. And if you want to fight for something, fight for that energy because that's the same energy that you bring to your kids, your family, when you go home. And you don't want to go home and sit there like a lump on a log going, oh man, I have this disease and it's just terrible and everybody treats me funny. I go play basketball, and if you don't want to play ball with me because I look like this, then you're going to sit on the side and watch me play because I'm pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not going to guard me because I have this disease, I'm just going to shoot all day and score on you. And I'm going to go home happy. I am not going to let this disease turn me into somebody that I am not.
And that's
So
exactly,
positivity is worth fighting for.
sorry, Lee, and that's exactly why I had to have you on, because the last couple of comments you just made were what stayed with me that day when I met you. And it stayed with me so much that even like close people around me saying in the last couple of years I've changed so much, because the one thing you said that I want everyone to take away, and I will repeat it, is be around the people that give you that positive energy. And if you're not feeling that positive energy, you don't need to give any negativity back. Walk away. And it's such
Walk
an
away.
empowering statement. And I think it's sometimes so difficult for people to do, but once you learn how to sort of master that, walking away from that negativity, it will just help build that confidence. That's really wonderful, really, really wonderful. Such a powerful thing to share with us this evening. So thank you so much for that.
No, I appreciate you having me to talk about it. I appreciate it.
It's been wonderful, Lee, and you know, I just feel like I hope people have people have taken away things that they can go away and perhaps, you know, work on as well. I wanted to open up a quick Q&A. I am conscious of Lee's time as well.
No, I'm okay. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask if anyone's got any questions that they wanted to ask either of us. Just if there's sort of any burning questions, I'm happy to sort of take them on my platform as well. But Lee's here with us and he won't be on the platform. So if there's anything that you would like to share or a comment, I will go through them now. If it's like with language,
somebody said they listened to that moth podcast. Thank you for listening to that. I did a moth podcast last year, and it was just me telling stories as well. But thanks for the good love on that one, because I really enjoy that moth show. It's really it's people just telling their own stories. I love that they asked me to do it, but I love just listening to the stories as well.
You can learn so much, can't you? This is where we learn, we grow, we become confident, we just find our path. And I think essentially
something that I have to stress to people as well. When I did my support group, we had a room because we thought it was a room that would fit 75 people, and 120 something people show up. It was standing room only. And the thing that really gives you strength is when you realize you're not alone, that there's other people that are going through exactly what you're going through, that there's communities and there's support groups and there's people all over the world, especially on this World Vitiligo Day, that you are, and you feel so alone when you're going through it, when you're like, I gotta hide and all these things. But when you take those blinders off and you look around, you'll start noticing there's a model that has vitiligo. There's a TV presenter that has vitiligo. I interviewed an actor named John Hamm, who was on a show called Mad Men. He's super famous. And he says, hey, you know, I have vitiligo. And I end up talking to him about having vitiligo. There are so many people that have vitiligo and live with it on a regular basis.
Well, I don't...
Just any example you can pick and use and grow from, it's so important to have that support around you. So I appreciate you.
Lee, it's incredible. I just feel like, you know, it's a funny statement to say, but back in the day, I wanted to find so many people like myself. And now globally, we have, you know, so many. These are just a few of the faces I want to share today. Yep. But there are so many people that bring our wonderful community together. And you are our voice as well. You are doing inspirational things. There are so many people that look up to you, and you are in the limelight. You are in the media. You are, you know, doing fantastic things. And, you know, I really do want to thank you for, you know, for making the time just to come and talk to all of us today, Lee.
No problem. A few people asked me, and I knew I was having a busy day, but when you reminded me, I'm like, oh yeah, Joti, I remember talking to you. I remember hugging you, and when I was there in London and going, oh, I'm so glad to meet you, and you had such good energy, and I'm like, I will talk to her.
That means so much, Lee. That means so much. And, you know, the one thing I would like you just to share is your book. I have mine coming through Amazon on the 2nd of July. My book of yours is arriving from Amazon. Do you have a copy at hand, or could you just share?
Get up and go grab one. I can see if I can find it real quick. I usually
I'm looking forward to the read. I love biography, so I'm really, really looking forward to your read.
You know, I tried to write the book. It would be as if I were as if I were talking, because I'm very casual in the way I kind of handle stuff. But I do have a copy here. Oh, let me run back over here. Okay. So I got this, and it was written many years ago.
Oh,
but
yes.
Do I kind of look like that now? It's called Turning White.
You do, Lee.
Yeah. Wait. Do I look like the?
I think it's the way it's. No, you do.
wait.
It's quite.
But yeah, the book's available. The book. Thank you for doing that. The book's available. It's about a decade old, but it's still, all the stories are true as I remember them, and a lot of the things that I talk about are actually in this book. So thank you for doing that.
TED Talks, all of that's on your website. So Lee Thomas,
Yep.
you've got your website as well for people to
LeeThomas.com.
get in touch and to, you know, be able to listen to your TED Talks. That would be super as well. So guys, do check that out for Lee Thomas, his book and his website and all the amazing things he is doing. He is a great part of our community. So I just want to say, yeah, thank you so much for being here today. And happy World Vitiligo Day.
Same to you. Happy World Vitiligo Day. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys for watching my YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed the content for today. If there's something that you want to watch, something you want to see, something you want to hear, or you want to share a story with me, don't forget to pop it in the comments below. And if you like the video you saw today, don't forget to hit the like button below. Thanks for tuning in and see you next week.